The National Three Peaks. A challenge taken on by many, but for one man, it represents the start of a new life. A life beyond long COVID.
Hi, I'm Russ. I'm 55 years old. I've been a customs officer all my life and dedicated myself to that job. But outside of customs work, I enjoy sport of all types. Huge fan of Newcastle United, but I played rugby for 30 years for Clevedon Rugby Club. Probably 20 years more than I should have done, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I enjoyed the camaraderie. But at age 46, I decided enough was enough, and I switched to cycling, which wasn't a natural sport for me, being 16, 17 stone normally. But I really relished the opportunity to set myself goals, and over the past few years I've climbed various Tour de France mountains, and I did a Land's End John O'Groats cycle, and they've all been huge challenges for me, but something I've really relished and enjoyed training for. My father died when he was in his late 50s, and I think it had a profound effect on me and the way I push myself now to achieve my goals, probably more so than I did when I was younger. In 2020, I contracted COVID for the first time. I suffered horribly in those 2 weeks. Probably should have gone into hospital, but that proved to possibly be my downfall that I didn't, I've heard since. And after 2 weeks I recovered, went back to work, thought everything was okay, but over the next 5 to 6 months I suffered physically and mentally with what now turns out to be long COVID. And in the end I was not fit to do the job, and at the September of 2020 I went long-term sick, thinking it was only going to be a few months, but here I am 3.5 years later, and I no longer work for the job. It was a tough time. My depression issues were huge during that time because I physically wasn't able to do sport. I could barely walk. I was a shadow of my former self. I had mental impairments, cognitive issues. And without having that outlet of physical activity and sport, I really suffered, and I plummeted to places I probably wouldn't want to go again. However, about 9 months ago, it got to a point where I'd done everything I was told by the doctors, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. I was feeling miserable, I was feeling down, and I decided I was going to just push myself physically to see how far I could go and see if I could make some sort of progress that would at least help me mentally. And that's the road I started on. As I steadily improved over the period of sort of 9 months, I realised I needed to set myself a goal. I've always had goals, and I've thought this is the time. Set yourself a goal. Goals are always there to be achieved or not achieved, but at least you're striving for something. So I decided I would try and climb Pen y Fan in the Brecon Beacons, something I've climbed many times, and I managed to do that, although it was a great deal of effort on a cold and wintry day. And I just decided mountain walking was the way forward at the moment, and I set myself a goal initially of thinking of doing Ben Nevis. But loosely in the back of my head, I always had a thought that possibly it would be achievable to do the other two to make the 3 peaks, which is Scafell Pike and Snowdon. And with this slightly reckless idea in my head, I decided to rope my daughter in, as I realised it was not going to be possible for me to do this without physical help along the way and a partner to lean on. And so Caitlin agreed to join me, and off we set to Bonnie, Scotland to give Ben Nevis a go.
arrived at the base of Ben Nevis. I am absolutely bricking it. This is such a huge challenge for Dad. He hasn't done anything like this in the last 3 years. To get up here today would mean absolutely everything to him. It'd be the start of getting his old self back, and I'm desperate for that to happen. It's been such a hard few years, but the challenge today is going to be so difficult. He's not only got battle his long COVID, his knee's in a really, really bad way. So I'm really worried. But if we could just get up here today, no matter what happened the rest of the trip, that would mean everything. So we'll see how it goes. Let's get on with it.
To start with, the climb up Ben Nevis went reasonably well. I got to about 3/4 of the way up into the cloud, and where it gets particularly shaly and horrible. And it was going okay to that point, but then I started to get very fatigued.
I mean, I'm struggling, so I know Dad's really struggling as well. I think his energy's completely gone, and the knee's really starting to give him some issues, but we're trying to take it bit by bit, and hopefully we'll get to the end soon. And with one last push, the end was in sight.
Really proud of myself. A year ago I couldn't even climb the stairs at home, so it's been quite a transformation after 3 years of long COVID, but it's quite brutal up here, so we're going to get ourselves off the top when we can give ourselves a bit more of a pat on the back.
We started our descent and were progressing nicely, but with the end growing ever nearer, disaster struck.
On the way down, my symptoms with the long COVID cut in immeasurably, and by the time we got to the lower slopes, I was dizzy, disorientated, my knee was in agony, and I was really struggling to take the large steps down from each of the boulders. And this was the first of many falls, probably 5 or 6 falls that I had, where I just felt dizzy and was stumbling around, and I could see it was really concerning my daughter. She was getting quite worried, and I tried to reassure her, but in my heart I knew I wasn't in a great place. Fortunately, we took it very steadily, step by step, and although it seemed to last forever, we got to the bottom and I was elated. It was super. It really chuffed at what I'd done. My knee was in agony, my body was in agony, and at that point I pretty much was telling myself, enough's enough. You've done Ben Nevis. That's a huge step on from where you were 9 months ago, where I could barely walk around the block. So it was a massive achievement, and in my heart I thought that was the end of that, and we'd make our way home and achieved a great thing. After Ben Nevis, we had a couple of days where we were due to travel down to the Lake District, to the Scafell Pike area. And as we had the hotels booked, we thought, well, we might as well stay in them. And we were broken people at that point. Both of us, funny enough, were struggling to walk properly with the aches and pains and everything. And we went out to take a look at Scafell Pike the day before we would have been due to climb it. And I think something in both of us just thought, again, let's just give it a go.
Just stopped for a little break. It's definitely living up to its reputation. A lot steeper than Ben Nevis, but it's also nice because you can actually see the top of this one. So still in positive spirits, and even if it is difficult, you can see this view behind me is exactly what's keeping us going. It's absolutely beautiful.
And then we made the final push to the summit cairn. It was very, very rocky and craggy underfoot, so you had to pick your way. But we trekked on. There was far more people around than was ever up Ben Nevis. It really was bleak at the top of Ben Nevis, so it was nice to have some company up there. We kept getting told by people there's only 20 minutes to go. Well, another 20 minutes later we get told by some more people there's 20 minutes to go. But we got there, and I have to say that one, all the way up, I was struggling, and I was absolutely chuffed to bits to get to the top. So it was brilliant, and it was actually a nice experience where you could sit and take in the views and enjoy what you've done, unlike Ben Nevis where you just wanted to get off the top as soon as you possibly could. So fantastic feeling. Got the Toon flag out, got a few pictures, had a chat with a few people, and got our energy reserves together to start making our way down.
Wanting no repeats of Ben Nevis, we made a steady descent. Dad even had a chance for some cold water therapy.
We did the last part of it at a slow pace, but ambled our way down, watched our footing, and got to the bottom, and we're absolutely chuffed again at achieving goal number 2. Before we tackled Scafell, we decided between us that we would completely cancel any plans of thinking about doing anything further with Snowdon. The only concern was, at this point, it was dawning on me that I felt I was quitting out on a full challenge, and all of a sudden I started to get ideas about doing Snowdon, and they started to sink in over the next day, and to a point where I thought, nah, we've come to do the 3. If we fail, let's fail in style, but let's give it a go. And despite my daughter's reservations, that's when we decided to change our plans and have a crack at Snowdon.
We are at the base of Snowdon, which, if you'd asked me after Ben Nevis, I thought was impossible, and if you asked me after Scafell, I thought it was impossible. We sat down, fully thought about going home, but I think we both think we've come too far now to give up. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it's certainly one of the hardest things Dad's done. With long COVID and knee issues, I can't quite believe we're giving this a go today. Not sure how it's going to go. It's going to be a long day, but we're just going to give it our best shot. We're absolutely drained, but we are finally on the home stretch. The summit is in sight. Let's go. What an absolutely monumental challenge that was. We have given that absolutely everything we had. I don't think we've got anything left to give, but I am so so happy. I'm completely speechless for Dad. This long COVID's such a serious condition, and a year ago this would be completely impossible for him. And whilst it's been such a challenge for him, it will give him a complete new lease of life. I've seen signs of the old him this week, really battling and doing these sort of fitness challenges, and I'm hoping this is just the start of him getting his old life back, really. I'm absolutely over the moon for him. Yeah, don't think you'll ever beat a moment like this.
You know, I'm just an everyday guy that was hit with a problem, and I've had to learn to cope with it. It was a bit earth-shattering for me, but it could have been so much worse, and it is for other people. So all I can say, I believe mental health and physical activity go hand in hand for a lot of people, and it doesn't matter what your goal is, just set it at a level that's hopefully attainable but is a challenge. And that goal can be as short as walking to the end of the street, or it can be to climb a mountain.